North Korea has tested a missile that could prove to be an intercontinental range missile, a missile capable of attacking the United States in due course. It is a missile that, if it had performed as it had been intended to, would have put an object into space which could be used as an attack against the United States, unleashing what Newt Gingrich, you've spoken about, has, among others, described as a strategic electromagnetic pulse attack, which would have a devastating effect on this country. In fact, transforming it from a 21st century superpower into a pre-industrial society, according to a Blue Ribbon Commission that studied the matter for Congress and reported last May. This is a very serious development. I wouldn't like, by the way, Bill Perry and Barack Obama's new Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Ash Carter, said a while back, have bombed North Korea, but I certainly would have used our missile defenses while we still have them, awaiting Barack Obama's removal of them.
So
I would have used that to shoot that missile down.
Sure, but when Newt Gingrich says we should have taken out, we should have launched an attack before the launch, he's wrong.
Well, again, Bill Perry and Ash Carter seem to have lined up with that view.
Newt Gingrich.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that Newt Gingrich has his view. It's not mine, but it is the view that two prominent Democrats have expressed as well.
All right, David Korn, your view.
Well, we just heard a lot of provocative rhetoric from Frank. Not surprising. I mean, there's no evidence that this was an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon. There's no evidence that the North Koreans are interested in doing that. They said they were trying to put up a satellite, and it failed and crashed into the sea. So talking about the possibilities, what's theoretically possible is sort of a rhetorical device that we heard in the run-up to the war in Iraq. You can talk about, you can come up with a lot of nightmarish scenarios. Now the question is, what is to be done? You know, right now North Korea already faces a lot of sanctions, and it's already rather isolated. President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton both called this a provocative act, but the question is, can they match their tough talk with with tough action now? It seems to me that the six-party talks that are underway, that have had their ups and downs over the past few years, but seem to be trending in a positive direction, you know, is still the best game in town. And, you know, the North Koreans obviously want attention, and the more, you know, we make this a bigger deal, I think it makes it harder for Americans and the Russians and the Chinese and the Japanese and the South Koreans to handle this.
Frank, isn't the far more plausible scenario, other than the North Koreans wanting some sort of electromagnetic pulse and knocking out a third of the electricity in the United States, as a lot of conservatives suggest might have happened or could happen, I suppose, isn't the far more plausible scenario that North Korea does want attention, and that if you look at every time they launch one of these, it's when the United States is focused on something else. We know that they want to engage in bilateral talks with the United States, not the six-party talks. Do you really believe that North Korea is en route to trying to somehow knock out the power to a third of the United States and put some sort of nuclear weapon on one of these missiles?
You know, I don't know. I hope not. Certainly their partner, Iran, who has participated in their nuclear weapons program and their ballistic missile programs.
On the receiving end, I mean, we should be clarifying, North Korea has shipped missiles to Iran. Iran has not helped North Korea. But go ahead, finish your point.
May I just finish my point, please?
Sure.
The missile development that they did in their test this week was monitored by the Iranians. The Iranians are active partners in both the nuclear weapons programs and missile programs. And I think when the Iranians say they wish to bring about, they say it is both desirable and achievable to bring about a world without America, what both the North Koreans and the Iranians, and for that matter the Russians and Chinese and others, understand is that we are extremely vulnerable to this sort of attack, even from perhaps a single weapon. So it's absolutely true that this test did not perform as they intended. It did not have an EMP weapon on it, as best we can tell. Thank God. We should have shot it down to demonstrate that we don't want them to have that capability, and I regret that we didn't do it.
Well, isn't it playing exactly into the Iranian hands if we, in fact, go to war with North Korea over something like this? Isn't that exactly what the Iranians would want us to do right now?
Well, I don't know that we have to go to war with North Korea, but I do think we need to defend ourselves against these sorts of developments. And I frankly think that the Iranians are interested in bringing about a world without America. We should be discouraging them as well. It's a silly policy to continue to believe, as David obviously does, that if we engage in these endless negotiations and we rely especially upon allies that are associated with these governments to stop them, that it will result in anything other than a greater danger danger to us in the future.
The problem is, Frank, that we don't have a magic wand and can bend, and that we can wave and bend the rest of the world's will to our wishes. And you talk about going to war against North Korea, and just leave Iran out of this for a moment. There's another country that should have a bit of a say here, and that is South Korea. Seoul is what 30, 40, 50 miles south of a DMZ that has hundreds of thousands, if not a million, armed North Koreans. The North Koreans may have 4 or 5 crude nuclear weapons that can't come anywhere close to reaching us, but they could be lobbed onto Seoul, maybe even lobbed as far away as to Japan. So it's really, I think in a lot of ways, not up to us to decide whether to go to war against North Korea or attack North Korea and risk a war on that part of Asia.
I want to play for both of you.
I think that's an interesting. Let me just make this quick point. Secretary Bob Gates said in response to a hypothetical question last weekend, would we shoot down this missile? He said, well, we might if it were headed towards Hawaii. Look, at some point you got to say, I understand you've got hostages in proximity. The Japanese are among them. They want to be defended against these attacks or prospective attacks. I think the American people expect that too. And thank God we've got a missile defense today, despite you, David, and your friends. We've got a missile defense today that would give us an option other than all-out war to protect our people.
Listen, there still is tremendous debate, this, about whether an intercontinental ballistic missile defense system can work. There's theater defense.
It does.
It does. Well, you say
it keeps working.
I can give you a
testing
list
it.
of
It keeps working. I'd rather have it than not have it.
With higher degrees than yours that say it doesn't work.
I'd rather have what we have than not have it.
We also know that deterrence works. So if you think if you're so worried about the North Koreans lobbing a single bomb, in the direction of Hawaii, listen, we knew about this launch for 3-4 weeks in advance. We are years away from North Korea being able to do anything resembling a sneak attack with a ballistic missile, let alone one with an EMP or a nuclear weapon on top of it.
I want to read for both of you. Here's what Newt Gingrich said in a live chat with Politico. He said, Dick Cheney is clearly right in saying that between the court decisions about terrorists and the administration actions, the United States is running greater risks of getting attacked than we were under President Bush. David, your reaction to Newt Gingrich?
Well, he's joined the, the Dick Cheney fan club. I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, right now, President Obama had a very successful trip in Europe. And the speech he gave today, which I know you'll talk about later in the show, I thought was groundbreaking in terms of bettering U.S. relations with not just Muslim countries, but other countries and other peoples around the world. And I think that is going to contribute to our security and our defense, anything more so than what Dick Cheney envisioned with Guantanamo and the war in Iraq.
And Frank, just if you follow Newt Gingrich's logic in all this, the idea that Obama somehow made the United States less safe, explain to us, how does it improve the U.S. safety if we were to follow Newt Gingrich's advice, launch a preemptive attack on North Korea, take out this missile launch, which of course didn't work, but take it out. North Korea would likely then respond against South Korea. The Chinese, of course, would likely then help North Korea. And all of a sudden, we have tensions between the United States and China in the midst of all this. How does that make America safer?
You'd have to ask Newt Gingrich or Ash Carter or Bill Perry that question rather than me, because I'm not sure that it would. Let me just say, I'm a member of Dick Cheney's fan club. I think transnationalists just like they are, or our Muslim enemies, that you're willing to submit to them, which is, I think, the kind of groundbreaking that was done today. This is not going to make us safer. It is going to make the world a more dangerous place when you alienate your friends and you embolden your enemies. And that's what Barack Obama's doing.
You've got to stick to facts here. Where in that speech does he say we're going to submit to anybody?
I think what he is using is code.
No. I'm a very specific question.
I'm answering your question. I'm answering your question.
Where did he say he would submit?
When he uses the word respect in the context of a waist bow to the king of Saudi Arabia, for example, and talks about respectful language, which is code for those who adhere to Sharia, that we will submit to Sharia. We will submit to the kind of program that it involves.
We have to know the code. We all have to know the code in order to understand how we're making ourselves more vulnerable.
You should know the code.
Right,
if you don't,
but my
you're going to have Sharia
just asked you for a specific example,
really
and you're referring to code. You're referring to code, and we...
I'm telling you, the code is they receive it in the Taliban headquarters and in Al Qaeda's caves and in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're perceiving this as submission. I'm telling you, just watch their behavior.
Frank, you really think after this trip, after Obama's there getting, having sending more troops to Afghanistan, rightly or wrongly, asking NATO to do more, that the message the Taliban is receiving is that the United States is going to submit to the Taliban?
I think
when Bob Gates HQ today?
Let me answer your question. When Bob Gates said, as he did about a month and a half ago, we'd be happy to have the Swat Valley deal that's got the Taliban implying Sharia in Pakistan apply to Afghanistan, it doesn't matter how many troops we throw out there. And by the way, David, you're not going to support this Afghan operation anyway. Let's be clear, we are throwing in the towel in Afghanistan, not holding up the hopes of the Afghan people.
You know, I think you're trying really hard here to put the words in the president's mouth. If respect to you means submission, I mean, I won't get into personal matters like your personal.
David, the big problem is, David, the big problem here, it's all because of you and your friends, David. It's all because of you and your liberal friends that were in this